Hello, everybody, and welcome back. You've seen the title of the video. I think it's going to be something along the lines of the golden chains of the passport bro world or something along those lines. And that's the sentiment that I'm trying to convey because the whole passport bro phenomenon has blown up and almost everybody is misleading you. It is not what it looks like. First and foremost, the super majority of it is sexual tourism. And the people who are misrepresenting this are doing it in a very unnuanced way. Something that you need to understand out there, if you're considering being a passport bro, you still need to speak to women. You still need to be attractive. Just because you're in China or Thailand doesn't mean that you can look like you've been hit by a shovel. The women over there still have fucking standards. And especially if you're like a beta, let's use that terminology. Women in these cultures are far more traditional. And especially if you're thinking about going to Eastern Europe, if you're not a masculine man by American standards, you are soft as baby shit by Japanese or Chinese or Thai standards. The Thai people are fucking warriors. If you think that you can be a weakling in America, but then be a strong man in Thailand, you are seriously mistaken. Probably the most vicious bar fight I've ever seen was this group of Thai people that I was drinking with all night. Oh, fuck. I forgot to talk about my book. Seeking Squalor, Toilet Umbrellas and Champagne Chandeliers. Check it out on Amazon. This is a story from the book. I was drinking with these Thai guys all night and a couple of Thai chicks. There was like maybe 12 of them in the group, like maybe 7 dudes, 6 women or so. And drinking all night. The bar closed, but that just means they stopped letting people in. As long as you were there and you were still willing to pay for more drinks, they let you keep drinking. And so it was just us. I think there was another white guy there. I think he was British. And then we were upstairs and the bar was empty. Downstairs, it was the owner of the bar, him and a couple of his buddies, and the employees. And once they had closed the place down, they started drinking. Well, when our group decided that we were finished and we were going home, on the way out of the bar, one of the Chinese guys decided that he had a fucking problem with these Thai people, and the most one-sided beatdown I have ever seen in my life commenced. Like I said, it was like maybe 6 to 8 Thai guys against a few more. Maybe it was like 8 or 9 Chinese guys. The Chinese guys got fucking cleaned. It wasn't even close. The Thai guys were like throwing head kicks and shit. Within seconds, within 10 seconds, most of the Chinese guys were laid out. A few of them just out cold. A couple of them just ran. A couple of them went into the parking lot and just ran for their lives. One of the Chinese guys went back into the kitchen in the back and came out with a couple of butcher's knives. But another Chinese guy stopped him from intervening and attempting a homicide. But the Thai guys just cleaned up, and they were the most regular looking guys you'd ever meet. And every single one of them is suddenly like a professional fighter, like dipping and weaving and like fucking throwing leg kicks and head kicks and shit and like clenched knees. It was the most vicious one-sided beatdown I've ever seen. So, if you're a pussy in America, by American standards, you're definitely going to be a pussy by Thai standards. And especially if you go to like Eastern Europe, Jesus Christ, you're going to try to hang with like a Polish woman? You're going to compete with Polish men? Are you out of your mind? Okay, so now that we've got the sex tourism thing out of the way, let's talk about economics. The reality is the amount you get paid is going to be directly proportional inversely to how good your quality of living is. So If you're living in Europe, let's say, you can get a job teaching English in Spain, but Spain is right next door to England. So the value of an English teacher isn't very high. You will always get paid more for traveling further and living in worse conditions. That's why China pays so well, because no one wants to go there. And there's very, very few foreigners. I saw the statistics at one point because I was working for a social media company and studying the demographics of the city was part of our job. In Wuhan, there were 14 million Chinese people. There were less than 20,000 foreigners, and almost all those foreigners were non-native English-speaking students. Of the people in the city who could even qualify to be an English teacher, it was less than 2,000. This is a city where there's literally millions of people who desire English training. And there's less than 2,000 people who can fill those roles. That's why I can walk into a school and I can demand $100 an hour. That's why I can take a contract and wipe my ass with it and say, actually, no, I want less working hours. I want more money. I want more paid time off. And that's what I did. Every year while I was there, I would actually orchestrate the teachers at the school that I was at. I would get them all to agree to not sign new contracts. And then once they've all agreed to that, I would go to the school and represent all the teachers in a negotiation. And the 4 years I was there, all 4 years, I radically improved our contract. Every single year, more pay, more time off, more holiday, less work every single year. Because we got them by the balls. We're there. What are they going to do? Replace us? There's nobody to replace us with. And they brought us all the way from whatever country we came from. And they vouched for us to get us our visas with the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. So it would be incredibly, they would lose face. It would look very bad for them to be canceling visas and to be expelling teachers. It would make them less likely to get a visa in the future. Okay, so socioeconomically, if you want to be a passport bro, you need to be asking yourself, what are you capable of living with? For example, at one point I was offered over $100,000 a year, but I would have to live on a military base in Afghanistan and teach Afghans. And I was like, fuck that. To me, that's not worth $100,000 a year. Maybe it's worth it to you. So you need to first decide what you can live with. What quality of life do you require? Now, let's be clear. Even in China, I was breathing poisonous air. I was, exposed to toxic water and toxic food on a daily basis. Everything was dog shit. The internet, get out of here, right? Utilities, you're lucky if you have hot water. You're lucky if your electricity or water even runs on a day-to-day basis. Things like cockroaches are you're just gonna have to accept that. The first apartment I lived at, the floor was alive at night. And also you have to live under a genocidal regime. But I was willing to do all that for $100 an hour to sing the ABCs because I didn't give a shit, and you'd often get paid in cash. Walking out of there with a fucking stack of money was awesome. But you have to consider what standard of living you require, and then you need to make a decision based on that. The better your living is, the less you're going to get paid. The closer to the English-speaking world, the less you're going to get paid. So the Middle East, Africa, and Asia will always pay more than Europe, North or South America. And teaching children will always pay more than teaching adults because teaching children is a shit job. It really is. It's a bad job. I hate teaching kids. It's rough. I used to wash dishes for an industrial kitchen. And when I say industrial, I mean we would contract with restaurants and we would make all their food. Restaurants that didn't have enough space for their own kitchen, like cafeteria restaurants, for example. And so we would make food for a university cafeteria. We were feeding like 8,000 to 10,000 people a day. And I used to work in the in the dishwashing section of that kitchen. So literally infinity dishes. It didn't matter if you had 100 hours in your day. It didn't matter if you never needed to eat, sleep, or piss. You can never wash all the dishes. It's impossible. And teaching kids was a worse job than that. So yeah, the worst job I've ever had is teaching children in a 40 screaming children in a concrete box. Worst job. And then washing dishes for 8,000 people a day. So what can you live with, and how much money do you need to make? And here's where the golden shackles come in, right? The idea of like a happy slave doesn't run away. Once you're there and you get comfortable, assuming that you're not one of these people who has a mental breakdown and flees the country 5 days in, because a significant minority of the expat population falls into that category. They arrive, they cannot psychologically accept how different this world is, and then they don't even tell anybody. They don't even tell their employer. Like on day 5 or 6 or 7, they just grab their bag and head to the airport and leave. And that happened pretty frequently. So assuming that you're not one of these people, once you get comfortable and once you start to learn the area and you start to learn the food and you learn a bit of the language and you begin unlocking the more nuanced parts of this society and the city that you're living in, and maybe even start a relationship with a local, you're going to become extremely comfortable. And that comfort might be the worst thing that's ever happened to you. The expat community is filled with people who came only for a short visit, and that was 10 years ago. And now they have like a wife and kids, and they're still working at whatever training center that they were working at 5 years ago, and they'll be there for the rest of their lives. And it's not my position that these people are wrong. Let me be clear. I'm not saying that they're wrong. All I'm saying is that where they ended up was not part of the plan. And you, viewer, if you're considering going overseas, you need to plan for that. You need to tell yourself, there's a significant chance that I get there and I'm living a life that's too good to stop. That was one of the big reasons I left China, because I got this feeling in my gut, and I always listen to my gut for big decisions. And my gut told me that if I don't leave, I'm never going to leave. If I don't leave immediately, I'm going to be here for the rest of my life. And I couldn't accept that, so I left. But every expat has to make that same decision. You're going to get there, and if it's a place like China, you're going to be working very low hours. You're going to be making a multitude of what the locals make. And by the way, they're working 50 or 60 hours and they're still making 1/5 of what you're making. You're going to be probably living in a giant apartment that you don't pay for, the school pays for. You're going to have massive paid time off if you work for a public school, because you get summers and winters off and paid time off. And there's just the perks go on and on and on. And you're going to sit back and you're going to have to you're going to have this come to Jesus moment where you realize that this is probably as good as it gets. When I was working, there were semesters where I worked 90 minutes a week, one 90-minute lecture a week. And I didn't get paid well by expat standards, but I was still making way more than the local Chinese people. And that's not even including making $100 an hour part-time work on the weekends. And so, there's this like weird existential dread, but it's existential dread from a positive perspective where you're thinking, I think that I sort of accidentally worked myself into a position where I don't think I'll ever have a better job than this. I mean, the situation I was in China with the quality of life I was living, how much money would I have to make in America to have a similar level of satisfaction. I'd have to be a millionaire. And that's the golden chain. Because if you were a millionaire in America, you'd be free. If I was worth $4 million, let's say, and I was living in the United States, $4 million at 4%, what is that, 160 grand a year in passive income? That's retirement. That's not even a light retirement. That's a hefty retirement. And that's true freedom. But what do you call it when you have all the benefits of that life, but without the money? If I already live in a system where 99% of my time is free time, and I have enough money that the cost of things locally is trivial. You can eat out at a fancy restaurant every single night. You can use DD, which is the equivalent of their Uber, and you can get the most expensive DD every single time where a guy in a Cadillac wearing a suit pulls up, If you're already living this, pseudo-retirement lifestyle, but you don't have the money, you're not a millionaire. How do you justify leaving that environment where everything's going so well, where you're sort of post-scarcity, and then dive back into your life at home, whether you came from America or Canada or England or France or wherever the fuck you came from? Chances are, when you get home, you're going to probably experience some pretty devastating depression because you're going to realize that you were happier overseas, wherever you were, whether you were in Vietnam or Thailand or China or South Korea. You were happier there. You had a better quality of life. You had a better work-life balance. You were making 1/5 or 1/10 the amount of money that you would make home, but somehow you had more money at the end of the day because of the difference in cost of living and taxes. And what I'm warning you is that the expat lifestyle, the passport bro lifestyle, for the super majority of expats was never meant to be permanent, but then it became permanent by comparison of what their life would be outside of that circumstance. And then from that point until you die, for the rest of your life, they are just making the best of it. Again, I need to remind you that the best of it is really good. It's really good. In most ways, my life in China was top notch. In terms of like genuine contentment, that's the happiest I've been since childhood. I have to think all the way back to middle school to think about another time in my life when I was as content as I was in China. But you can't escape the reality that it doesn't translate. It doesn't matter how successful you are in China, it will never translate to success in America. And that sincere freedom that you would get if you had like $4 million in the bank, making 4% off of it, that sincere sense of freedom you will never have as an expat. And you need to come to terms with that, and ideally come to terms with it before you leave. Before you leave, you need to have an exit strategy. And that's what I did. I think that being a passport bro, being an expat, is sort of like willingly jumping into a hole. And in that hole is unlimited access to most of the things that you want, especially women and money, or not even money, just lifestyle. But if you don't first build a ladder for yourself and lower the ladder into the hole, once you jump in, you realize you're stuck. And the super majority of people who jump in never climb out because they can't. I built a ladder for myself, and that ladder was 18 months of obsessively studying personal finance, investment, and the stock market. And then I laid out some very clearly defined financial goals. And I told myself, no matter how long I live overseas, whether it's 1 month or 10 years, as long as I'm meeting these goals, I'm not wasting my time. As long as I'm meeting these goals, then the ladder out of the hole is still valid. And that's exactly what happened. I was there for 4.5 years. When I decided to leave, it was trivially easy for me to leave. And I was able to not just leave, but I was able to come back to the United States and put together some very positive things like buying my first real estate property, for example. These fundamental financial goals validated my existence as an expat. If I didn't have these things, I don't think I could have justified leaving, even when I knew at a fundamental level that leaving was the correct decision. So that's it for today. Let me know under the video if you have any other questions about being an expat. I'd love to talk about them more. I can talk more about women if you want. Feels like sort of a played out subject though. Like everyone's already aware that men go overseas, especially if you're a tall white guy with blue eyes. You're going to be very popular in Asia. And that's just the way it is. If you're not a tall white guy with blue eyes, go somewhere else. I always told my Chinese students, because there's more men than women, and the Chinese women hate Chinese men. I always told them to go overseas. I was like, go to Brazil. I don't know if Brazilian women like Chinese men, but I know that you'll be unusual. And as long as you're willing to learn how to dance, I bet you a Brazilian woman will give you a chance. And that's all that is required to get a chance. So anyway, Seeking Squalor, toilet umbrellas and champagne chandeliers, buy it on Amazon because I'm trying to retire. Take care. Bye-bye.